1 second. Let me call the roll first.
Okay, sorry.
And then I'll turn it over to you. And let's make sure, are we live?
In about 5 seconds, you will be. 4,
Okay, 5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, hello everyone. This is High Point Mayor Jay Wagner. I'm calling to order our meeting for purposes of manager's briefing session. Before we begin, I'd like to call the roll, see who is present. Councilman Michael Holmes, are you present?
I am here, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councilman Tyrone Johnson. Councilwoman Peters.
Here.
Councilman Moore.
I'm here.
Councilman Williams let me know he's going to run a little bit late. So Councilman Hudson, are you with us? Okay. Councilman Jones, are you with us? I think I saw your name, but you may be muted. Oop. Councilman Jones, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, Councilman Jefferson. All right, and I'm present. One more time, Councilman Hudson, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, did I miss any councilman? Okay, so we have, looks like we have 6 currently present. Others, I think, will be joining as we move forward. So I will go ahead then and turn the meeting over to our interim city manager, Randy McCaslin, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item on the manager's briefing today is a discussion regarding a presentation on our DEI program. We have Jelani and Jerron here to make a presentation to the council and answer any questions that the council may have about our efforts in this area thus far. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jelani.
Thank you, Randy. Jerron, whenever you're ready, we can cue up the presentation. Okay. Well, thank you, Randy. Mayor and City Council, my name is Jelani Biggs. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the City of High Point. Today, I will be briefly discussing the DEI program, its launch, and some of the initial next steps. Next slide, John. So as you can see here, what I've done is just some highlights of what we'll discuss today: defining and communicating our organizational commitment, assessment and data collection, internal network, and then training and implementation. Next slide. First, with any program such as this being a new one, what you realize is you need to define what these terms mean. If you do enough research in the space, you will see that there are various definitions from a lot of different sources, but these are some definitions that I thought were helpful from Tuskegee University. Diversity being the presence of some of the differences that are commonly identifiable. You'll see them listed there. Equity, promoting impartiality within procedures, processes, and distribution of resources. And then inclusion, an outcome to ensure diverse groups feel and are welcomed, the degree to which individuals can participate fully in the decision-making processes and development opportunities within the organization or group. Next slide. One of the first things I think that's important, especially since City Council, city leadership has identified DEI as a key commitment for the organization, is us communicating our shared commitment. You can go to the next slide. One way that I think we can do that is making sure that we have unifying language and making sure that we're communicating the importance of this program universally and in a consistent manner. One way I think we can do that is through one High Point leveraging the unique qualities and varied experiences of our workforce and community to promote inclusive growth and actualize impactful change. I see this as a universal campaign that would encompass some of our equity-minded functionality, whether that's human relations, whether that's DEI, or even our increased MWBE efforts. Next slide. This is actually a quote that I pulled from an ICMA report that I thought was very helpful. Governing for Equity. This is an official that is within a municipality where they pull case studies and talked about what it's like to roll out these programs, what to look for, and key considerations. And I'll only highlight that final sentence. What do we mean when we talk about this? So it's a carryover from the slides I just showed, that we want to make sure that we're communicating this in a uniform fashion, and that from leadership and folks like myself, that we're communicating to our stakeholders and residents the importance of the program. Next slide. So one of the first steps that I think is key in the rollout of this program is an organizational assessment, a broad, detailed, and thorough assessment of where we stand, and making sure that we identify areas for growth that not only includes employee demographic and personnel data, but also interviews and survey data, some more of the qualitative information that we'll need as well. You can go to the next slide. So in the first few months of getting into the program and starting in my role, I've been in communication with regional partners and agencies that have helped establish best practices. One good thing is that we have some regional partners that have embarked on this as well. City of Greensboro is a bit down the road and had their program in place for quite a while. And they've been a key resource in helping us establish baselines. What are some of the things we need to know getting out of the gate? In addition, City of Winston-Salem, who just launched their DEI program right after us, they're helping and collaborating on things that we can do as shared entities to make sure we put in best practices. And of course, we'll also be using some of our educational institutions like High Point University and other third-party consultants. You see at the bottom there, I have ICMA and GARE. GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. They've been identified by our partners in the city of Greensboro and others as industry leaders on helping us do some of the more technical aspects of the assessment. And we'll of course be working with them as we establish survey templates, how we roll out to different departments, and a framework for doing the assessment. One thing that we quickly realized in getting in this work is that there's high demand. GARE quickly let us know that due to that demand, there's quite a bit of turnaround time on their ability to provide technical assistance. So in conjunction with engaging in third-party consultants like that, we'll also be establishing our own framework with our regional partners as well. Next slide. In conjunction to engaging with third parties, and as we plan for a citywide assessment of where we stand on DEI metrics, we're also partnering with, of course, human resources and IT services. Much of the work that I'll be doing, this program will be doing, runs parallel with human resources, policies, practices that they already have in place, and making sure that we work together to standardize some of the new initiatives and those policies. Next slide. You heard me earlier mention the One High Point campaign that would encompass some of our equity-minded functionality, whether that's human relations, DEI, but also MWBE support. I think that leveraging the functionality of these programs and working together can maximize our footprint on some of these initiatives. So it would also be the expectation that the DEI program would assist in MWBE, whether it's outreach, workshops, marketing initiatives, and many of the things that they'll be looking to do in the near future. We are always looking for examples of this. In the city of Raleigh, Their equity and inclusion office includes all human relations, MWBE, and DEI. So we do have some partners we can look to as we engage in that work. Next slide. Internal network. So this is a concept actually in my meetings with the city of Greensboro that I thought was a really good idea to implement here. This is where we would be tapping on department representatives across the city to help disseminate information and also get information back into the DEI program. An example of that is holding quarterly or even monthly meetings with these department representatives to hear back from them. What are your challenges in terms of recruitment, retention, training, and any other DEI related metric as we get that out. So this is an efficient way, not only for me to disseminate information on some DEI initiatives and things to come, but also hear back from the departments as well. Next slide. And so for council, just to give you some context, as we zoom out a bit, this first part of the presentation are citywide considerations. Things that we'll be doing as an organization as a whole. And this is a general time frame. The 3 to 6 months you see at the top there, preparation and also research and information gathering, that's where we are right now. So we're meeting with our regional partners, we're engaging with third-party consultants, we're trying to create that baseline, that foundation for which the program will launch. The next 6 to 12 months, we're hoping once we get an assessment back, we will look at those findings and it'll help us make a plan and develop that plan. And then in the 12 to 18 month frame, we will be looking at implementation, reporting out some of the things that we're doing on a daily basis once we've identified those areas for growth from our assessment. Next slide. So again, that first part of the presentation was some citywide things that we would be doing, considering, and key things to look at. Now we're going to drill down a bit into the department approach. Many of these phases are much like the larger assessment, but again, we would be going from department to department and doing a more nuanced approach. Phase 1, department assessment and engagement. Phase 2, data and information evaluation. And then phase 3, recommendations for implementation. And you can go to the next slide. So again, much like the citywide assessment, we would do that for each individual department. It's not lost on us that a department assessment for communications and public engagement, for example, may be different than the fire department or engineering for that matter. So I do think it's important that while we have a general framework, we also want to have some room to account for the differences in each department and their functionality. So this includes meetings, interviews, fact-finding, to really understand each department and how they're structured. Next slide. These are just some of the key things that we would be looking for when we go in. One, you want to know how that department's structured. You want to get rules and policies that they have established. If they're not written, are there some things, some practices that they do that's commonplace that we want to know about? And then we would move into interviews with leadership and engage key staff as well. Next slide. From that assessment, we would create a report that would be sent to the managing director for review, consideration. We can identify areas that may need a little more attention, may require a little extra review and fact finding. And then we would share that report with senior management and city council as deemed appropriate. And then of course, phase 3, we would move into education and training. From the assessment to the report phase, we would take those areas that we've identified for growth and then implement that in training. And that could include bringing in subject matter experts, utilizing our DEI department coordinators to keep me abreast of issues they're facing in their department, as well as leveraging some existing practices already put in place by human resources. You see that last bullet point there. This is actually a very specific thing that we will be looking to do which is place city departments in connection with career placement departments at some of our local universities and colleges. I've researched a handshake portal and actually met with some of their representatives about this is where many of the internships, job opportunities, and resources are housed for students to access. They also allow you to tap into their alumni databases. So I do see that as a very specific tool we can use to tap into some applicant pools that we historically haven't been tapping into. Next slide. And these are just some other considerations as we get rolling here. We will have some staff considerations and resources. Again, we will be using existing internal partnerships, some of the outward facing functionality that human resources already have. We'll be supporting MWBE efforts in the city and of course, partnering with human resources. And this is some information that's already been submitted to senior management. In addition to my role, we would be looking for a DEI specialist to come on full time. I do anticipate that once we get back our assessment, or once we complete that, there will be quite a bit of programming, training, and community outreach that we'll be doing. The city of Winston-Salem, again, they've just launched their program. They have a director and 3 full-time employees. The city of Greensboro, they have a director and an additional full-time staff. This will be a specialist level position. And then as you can see, we'll also be doing some training of staff, membership resources as well. Next slide. And finally, we're using human relations as benchmarks for some of these numbers as well. Some of the outward facing programming, I do anticipate recruitment events, youth engagement events, festivals, just some of the general outward facing programming that we'll be doing. That's all I have for a presentation. Happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Jelani, thank you for the presentation. This is Councilman Holmes. When you are, can you go over again kind of the integration between the different departments in terms of reporting and what metrics that you guys will be using to assess performance of these departments under DEI?
Sure, and Councilmember Holmes, thank you for the question. I do anticipate that once we have an assessment of the city in some areas of growth, we can get a little more detail with that. But on its face, some of the things that we already know is that we want to standardize processes. Some of the things that will be put in place won't be department to department, but some citywide initiatives that we'll be hoping to see implemented in each department, whether that's how we identify hiring managers, what questions do we ask during interviews, what is our selection criteria for applicants, what's our scoring metric. Some of those items are specific metrics that we'll be looking for in terms of recruitment and also hiring. I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. I know it we'll get a little bit more granular as we flesh this out and we see where we are in current state. But I just wanted to know what the measurement expectations were and how we were going to quantify the performance of DEI with the departments. Thank you. It was very clear.
Sure.
Mr. Biggs, this is Councilman Moore.
How you doing, Councilman?
I'm good. Hope you are. So on the one slide, do we anticipate down the road or the next council that this position looks like it's going to add 3 or more staff members to the department?
No, the one slide where I use Winston-Salem as an example, that's a general framework for staffing. Given the scale and scope of what will be required to implement after an assessment, I do think it's reasonable that we would expect at least 1 full-time specialist position in the near future. just to get rolling on some of these things. If we have competing events, if we have multiple engagements that we'll have to be responsible for, it's my anticipation that a full-time staff member is our immediate ask, and that at a later date we can assess capacity and if there's a need for more. But some of the DEI programs around the state within the region have structured themselves such that they have multiple layers of positions to get everything done that they need to get done.
Okay. And that those are descriptions or functions that this position would be doing. And obviously this thing is going to unroll itself, but you mentioned several times about, I don't know if I'll use the right word from memory, but mirroring, working closely with, paralleling HR, human resources. So do you not feel that many of those things could be intertwined there?
Well, while I do think that many of our functions will work in tandem with human resources, there's a unique set of responsibilities that usually come with this role and meeting certain DEI related metrics, whether that's engaging in a nuanced way with some of our educational partners to ensure that not only that we're getting our opportunities in front of folks, but we're also encouraging them to participate in our opportunities that we have here in the city, and additional training internally. I think that while many of our functions work alongside human resources, they are unique.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jelani?
I don't have any questions. This is Councilman Jefferson, but did want to say thank you for the presentation. From the approach, it looks like we're going to have something that'll be pretty thorough, pretty comprehensive, and ultimately what we hope to be effective in reaching what council sees as a strategic improvement. So thank you, Mr. Biggs, and thank you, I know, to the rest of the folks who have been working with you on all of this.
Thank you, Councilman.
Well, this is Councilman Johnson, and I really didn't have a question. I just wanted to let you guys know that it was presented very thorough, and I do not have any questions because it was presented very thorough. So thank you. Job well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, hearing none. Jelani, thank you very much for the presentation. And then Councilman Holmes, I believe you wanted to have a discussion regarding the marketing program and what council had envisioned in regard to that program.
Yes, thank you, Randy. Not really in terms of what council had envisioned. I think we have that. I think what we needed to nail down, and I think there's some other members of the task force that are on today, and Jelani as well. As we were planning the strategic retreat for the marketing branding task force, some interesting questions came up about what would happen post the retreat. So, the question would be, what would be council's appetite for a full-scale marketing campaign? For those of you who have worked on those before, those do require a significant amount of resources and time. And so the question was going to be, is the city going to commit resources to bring in an outside agency, or would it be handled in-house by our marketing team with Ryan and Jaron and his group? And so the ask of that would be a significant amount of man hours from our marketing team, or we would opt to go the route of bringing an outside agency. So the reason why we canceled the retreat is that I didn't want us to go into the retreat, come out with a lot of solutions, and then lose momentum because we had to answer the question that I'm posing right now. So I think the what council needs to do is for us to have a discussion on what the commitment resource-wise is going to be to this effort of marketing and branding at the city level. So I don't know if this is the moment to have it, or if we can have that kind of open discussion now. But I think it needs to be had if we're going to continue with this, because it seems that we can put together a lot of effort and then it not go anywhere because we don't commit to implementation of a strategy. So I think if we can kind of center around first answering the question, will the city commit resources either way, and then what is the preferred method? Is it outside agency or internally with our own marketing team? I'll open the floor for any input, and if any of the task force members are out there and they would have something to add, I would welcome that as well.
Hey,
Chair
Councilman
Holmes.
Holmes, this is Councilman Jefferson. Appreciate you raising this question and think it's a very fair point. I know there are a lot of folks excited about this strategic marketing effort. Many folks who willingly volunteer to be a part of not only the task force, but also the retreat that would come. And I know with the great minds that were set to be in the room, whether virtual or in person, we were going to come out with a great result. And so building on that momentum, I think, is of the utmost importance. And so to your prompt here, I think that, first what comes to mind is, I think that our marketing and in-house folks are extraordinary, phenomenal, and they may very well, when they look at it, Duran and team may look at it and say, hey, here's what we're seeing, here's what the task force is saying, in-house, here's what we can do. And then perhaps there's some, sort of external functions and tasks that want to be carried out that perhaps we say we can go externally to sort of add that capacity in. But I think we'll know that maybe a little bit better from that task force. I think it just really comes down to, like you said, are we willing to commit the sort of appropriate resources and whatnot to it? And maybe it's a chicken and egg answer, because I know council is probably saying, well, what's the number we need to commit? And then task force is probably also saying, what is council willing to commit? But I think that, at least coming out of this conversation, us being willing to truly grapple with and embrace, understand, and fully leverage that this is going to take a sizable effort, and we want to support our in-house team for whatever capacity they feel like they need to do it. And then if they feel like it's in the best interest of the city to bring in external, then, we want to support that as well. There's no sense in investing millions of dollars downtown and we're not getting folks coming and taking full advantage of it. Granted, I know it's the pandemic and no one's, doing a lot of things right now, but still, I think that we need to be forward thinking about this and be proactive. We don't want to make the assumption that if we build it, they will come. We've got plenty of people who are north of 311, up 68, near the Palladium. Lots of folks in Ward 5 and Ward 6 who, when you talk to them on a daily, are saying, we just don't know much about what's going on downtown. And we've got to find a way to attract those folks. We also have to find a way to attract and retain a lot of the young professionals we talk about. I mean, there's so many ways to go about doing this, and we can do it the right way. We just have to be willing, I think, to be bold in how we support that kind of effort. Same way we were bold to support downtown, we have to be bold to support where we'll make downtown a success, and that's getting people down there and marketing to attract them down there.
Councilman Holmes, this is Councilwoman Monica Peters. May I please speak?
Yes, Monica, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you. So I think one of the things that kind of came out of that task force meeting was we started really talking about what exactly are we wanting to market? I mean, I know we're talking about our city, but we've got Forward High Point doing the Callis project. We've got a High Point Market Authority really focusing on a market district. We also discovered, I know that we've got a lot of new signage that we've just only had for a few years. But we also discovered that our city's overall marketing and branding is 20 years old. So I guess one of the questions were, do we want to focus on an area, or do we want this task force to help with a new marketing campaign for the entire city? And then those different groups that are doing certain segments would fit under the umbrella. Is that right, Holmes?
Yes, I think we discovered early that there were so many different campaigns that focused on either the downtown or a specific niche within the city that repeating that would be reductive in the end. So I think what we arrived at is that, you know, this effort needs to unify all of the campaigns that are currently underway, and incorporating, you know, aspects, elements of all those different campaigns into a unified theme, and also to address our branding efforts when it looks at our logo, our tagline, and things of that nature. Now, we may not do all that in one fell swoop, but I think overall the mission of the task force will be to look at how we present ourselves in all the aspects and elements of the city. So I think we did a lot, and Jerron can fact finding what we had in terms of campaigns that were already underway by some of the groups that are represented on the task force. And what we found out is that there's, you know, some overlap there. So you know, the mission of this task force should be to look at an entire citywide campaign, incorporating the elements of the campaigns that are already there. And I think that's what we arrived at is the full mission of this task force. So you know, I guess the question now is back to the original, you know, questions. You know, what are we going to commit to? You know, and how are we going to, you know, what resources are we willing to commit? Do you all feel, as, you know, members of council, that it would be too burdensome on our marketing team to bring in to drop that particular request onto them to create a marketing campaign, or some hybrid form, or something that Councilman Jefferson suggested, that maybe we do some of it in-house and then outsource some of the things that we need to outsource? So that's really the question that I'm asking before we engage in a full-scale working retreat to come up with these ideas that we then may end up having to sit on. So please, open for ideas.
Yeah. This is Mayor Wagner. I'm interested in if Jerron could give us some kind of give us his thoughts on how he feels the capacity of his department is to handle something like this, or whether he would rather see it farmed out.
Thank you, Mayor Wagner. I think that once we started digging into some of the pieces of this, we were able to see a significant amount of work that was being done by a lot of our partners. So, you know, anywhere, you know, CVB, Forward High Point, our friends at the market. And I think from the city standpoint, there are things that would not be redundant that we could do uniquely that would be an all-encompassing sort of higher level branding that would also incorporate some of the areas that we have with our partners. But I will say that from the standpoint of scope, this is a very large endeavor. And I think one thing that we've heard is there are people that are watching us, subject matter experts. You know, the other thing we found out, a lot of people are marketing experts that we didn't know were marketing experts to start with, plus all the marketing experts that we do have in their capacities of what they do. So I think that a good start would be from the department level for us to assess what the capacity would be for a scope of project that would have to be defined, though, have to be a little bit more defined. If we just say we're doing marketing and branding, to some of the points that are made, it's a huge endeavor. I mean, projects like that could take a couple of years. So I think if we start on something, Councilwoman Peters mentioned the age of some of our logos and designs. There are other pieces of, what taglines. So I think to answer your question, we would probably need some time to get an idea of what resources are out there that would uniquely benefit us and be able to come back with a scope that would help council and senior management and council kind of get their hands around what's going on. But I think it's still very broad. So we would need to refine. If the council is asking for recommendations or suggestions from staff, that's one thing. If council wants to see what's out there, but a lot of this would depend on the direction. And I think there was a lot of good effort and a lot of good energy, but I still think we need to refine that direction more, and the will of the manager and the council as far as how we want to move forward with that. We're definitely flexible to be able to do that. But to answer your question, I would like to be given some time to come back with a recommendation of just what our capacity would be. And much like many other departments, consultants and people on the outside help us with capacity for an organization our size, taking things on this magnitude. So that would be my best way of answering that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jerron. Are there any members of the task force out that would like to weigh in on how they scoped out their campaign and cost features, and to kind of give us an apples to apples comparison of what it would possibly look like for us as a city to undertake this? Maybe the Market Authority or Ford High Point, if anyone's on.
Yeah,
I think I can chime in, but Ray wanted to say something quick.
Yeah.
Ray.
Thank you, Jessica. Just wanted to tell you all a couple of things that we're involved with now. Is we do have a marketing and image committee that's been meeting regularly. We've kind of looked at initially different downtown neighborhoods, which is something the Furniture Authority had done. And so we've kind of gotten through those, now kind of coming up with some of the additional things as far as images and graphics and signage and other things. Actually, I just got off of a Zoom call with a potential consultant that will likely, at least I'm hoping to be able to bring in the new budget year to help fine tune that for us and actually get it, on paper with ideas and images and the taglines and merchandise and other things that may go along with that. The other thing I think, as Councilman Jefferson talked about, is, for us, it's also events and festivals and other things to get people excited, which is part of marketing downtown, as even more so than logos and slogans. But so one of the things, we also have a marketing and promotions committee, and we've actually put together a pretty aggressive plan that we'd like to implement, which would actually see downtown events almost every other week from the start of June to the 1st of November. We think we have to come out of COVID hard. I think it's going to be a little bit of a slow start initially, but to get people back to coming downtown, and they'll be in different areas of downtown, different types of events for different markets. Some will be concerts, others are festivals, others are kind of standalone type of things. The problem with that for us, and as with everybody else, is going to be funding. As you all know, with the cuts last year, our current funding is really only enough for office operation. We have actually no money on our budget for projects, which is tough to do. So we've had to be doing a lot of back the scenes type of things. We'd like to get forward out front. I know I've talked with the manager's office with some recommendations moving forward for special events and marketing. I've also submitted an application to the county for funding to help with that as well. But it is going to take some funding for us to be able to do those type of events. So We do have some sponsors and some sharing with CVB and the Furniture Authority on some of those, but we're going to need to kind of at least have enough in matching on that. So we're looking to, we'd like to take the lead in downtown. We're looking to kind of coordinate that with the Furniture Authority and what they've done, because we do have a lot of overlap in our district. But then how it goes into that broader city basis, and, which I think is what the task force is trying to see. How do we take these other efforts and bring them under a bigger bubble? My bubble's, but Jessica's is pretty small. I mean, it's a couple of square miles, but our city's much bigger than that. So at that point, that kind of tells you in on where we are.
Jessica, I think you wanted to add something.
Yes. So kind of to talk about, you kind of mentioned just like the scope of work, but then capacity and kind of how we kind of fell into the process that we've fallen into now. I'm a little different than the city of High Point, where the city of High Point does have a marketing team. It's a small marketing team. Props to you guys for pulling off everything that you pull off. But it is still a team of people for me in this project. Certainly we have other staff at the Market Authority, but as far as executing the on the ground branding, on-site branding and wayfinding, it was just me that would be doing that. And so I think from our perspective, we were not looking to redo our logo. And so really it was the execution that we needed a lot of help with. Market is 13 city blocks. So it is a lot for me to solely project manage. And then also, I mean, while marketing, their expertise are definitely in marketing, mine is more logistical. So just having a outside source to really make everything consistent and good, that it's not just Jessica from the Market Authority approving anything by herself in a silo. We felt like that was really important to us. I will say that it's been very helpful, but now that we're really getting into execution, I've seen some kind of first phases, drafts of the phase one, actually just today. And we're really excited about it, but it is going to be a 3-phased approach for us. So doing small temporary things for June market, then maybe upscaling that a little bit for October, with hopefully full implementation by April 2022. So there are a lot of layers to this project. So I am thankful to have the agency to at least help me with some of that, some of the logistical project management aspects of all of that. And that's without redoing our logo. We are definitely redoing the branding, the on-street branding, but our existing logo and, that kind of stuff is already implemented within it. So a lot of the design work on our end was done. And so, I think as far as, like Jerron said, this could take years depending on exactly the scale of the project you guys are looking at, whether it's full logo or, other smaller stuff. A lot of our signage that we're doing or proposing is either temporary, or if it is a more permanent kind of fixated thing, the branding on it itself, we planned on changing, probably every couple of years, just depending on the situation, market, the longevity of the branding, et cetera. So, as you guys sort this out and like kind of really nail down on it, we can definitely look back at what we've done, see what we need to change, if there's other things that need to be looked at or addressed. So yeah, it's kind of where we're at right now.
Thank you, Jessica. And not to continue to belay the point, I think that what we've discovered is that we have a lot of resources that have already been created. The question is now, how do we unify those? And I think the next couple of working sessions of the task force will be to kind of bring that definition that Jerron spoke about. But because we are close to budget, I do think that we should have the discussion of a budgetary line item for marketing and branding. So I would really like us to have, I will commit as chair for us to have some very concrete definitions of what we would like to do And then I would like for council to consider a budgetary line item, the marketing task force, based on those definitions. So that's really my ask of council today. If any of you have any questions or comments, I would appreciate those.
Councilmember Holmes, this is Joanne Carlisle, your city attorney. I'm going to kind of defer to our assistant city attorney, Megan McGuire, who is going to be taking the lead in assisting the city on this matter. I've heard so many different folks speaking today, and many coming from different areas, of course, and we want to do everything we can from our department to assist you guys. But for example, you know, when we heard a while ago about the request for funding, the first question that popped into my head is that forward high point, and how would those funds be addressed? Because we've got issues, of course, with the city. The task force isn't a formally organized group to make that request. I presume that's forward high point. I don't know how many conversations you've had with Megan already, but Megan, if you want to weigh in there, I mean, like I said, she's our area expertise in the area. So,
Thanks, Joanne. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute fast enough. I think what you're raising, what everyone's raising is a really important point, just to think about it from the city as an organization perspective. So if, you know, all of our community partners have their own programs and, you know, their own funds and their own goals, and they are very helpful for us to learn and to get a feel of what's going on in our city right now. But if we're looking at it from the citywide perspective, I think it's really important to think about us owning the direction, as well as the intellectual property, as well as, you know, any federal registrations that we may want to do for taglines, branding, colors, logos, all of those things. It does take an entire review of what's going on in our city, but it's also important to remember then, when we either use consultants or use Duran's group, that from our perspective, it's the ownership is at kind of the city level and direction, and everyone that is on the task force is very helpful and important to understand what they have going on, as Councilman Holmes mentioned, with their own specific projects. But I think it's really important to understand, is the focus on a citywide perspective, or is it on, for example, forward high point with the downtown perspective? Obviously, the market authority is their own authority, so, you know, we're just kind of looking and learning from them as an example. But I think that direction is important to think about going forward, what the goal is, and then understanding, you know, as a municipality, you see a lot of other municipalities that do have brands and that do have logos. You know, Charlotte's got a lot. We see that on the highways, and you hear commercials about it, you know, Asheville, all those sorts of things. So if we're really looking at it from the top down citywide perspective, and then owning that intellectual property that we're then going to use to market and brand our city, it's slightly different than all of the community partners who have their own programs and agendas, if I said that correctly. So I think it's just something important to think about going forward. And I commend Councilman Holmes for kind of doing that at this point, so that we know what the correct direction is. And then our office will be here as your support to make sure that you're doing clearance searches, that brands and logos and marks are available for the city of High Point to use, and then trying to get protection over them as well from an intellectual property perspective.
yeah, and thankfully, you know, we've got Megan here. She's got some real good experience in that area, and we've got so many resources with everyone coming together in the community. I'm really eager to see where this goes.
Thank you, Joanne and Megan. So I just wanted to make sure that we got this discussion out. We are planning on having the marketing and branding task force on the 27th. And so this will be on the agenda to begin to define the scope. So you are all welcome to attend. But I think this is the discussion that we need to have in terms of what the commitment will be and what we'll do with this effort going forward. So hopefully we'll have some very concrete directives coming out of maybe the next 2 working sessions. And then right before budget, we'll have some very, very clearly defined items that we can consider for budgetary commitment. Thank you.
Councilman Holmes, this is Councilman Moore. Before we leave this, and Ray Gibbs as well, could you supply me and the others, if they would like it, they're on the call, with a list of the members of your task force, Mr. Holmes, and Ray, you talked about some committees and people you're dealing with as well. Could you give us an update on who your partners are and that type of thing?
I'll get them to y'all tomorrow.
Okay.
I think is Tammy Tammy on the call? I think she's here. If Tammy could pull that together for us, that would be great. Tammy, thank you.
Thank you.
Are you wanting just the names of your task force members, Councilman Holmes?
Yes, ma'am. That would be great.
According to record thus far, it's yourself, then it's Councilwoman Peters, Monica Peters. It's Assistant City Manager Greg Ferguson, Managing Director Jerron Hollis, Mr. Tom Conley with the High Point Market Authority, Ms. Jessica Nguyen with High Point Market Authority, Mr. Patrick Chapin with the Business High Point Chamber of Commerce, and he's asked that Lauren Miller be also copied or a part of the meeting process when he's not available. Mr. Ray Gibbs, who's with Forward High Point, and Ms. Melody Burnett, which is with the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Great. Tammy, if you could put that in an email and send it out to all members of council, just to have that as a record for them, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Randy.
Okay, I think that was the two items that we had on our agenda for today's briefing. We'll give you just one FYI, and I sent out a email to council right before this meeting started regarding the budget. We plan on presenting that to City Council on May 3rd. We plan on holding the public hearing for the budget at the May 17th council meeting. We will be needing the council to look at their calendars about having some budget workshops. We've tentatively suggested that May 10th, 11th, 12th, and possibly the 13th be set aside for budget workshops from 3 to 5 in the afternoon, depending on the number that we'll need, depending on council's questions. So just wanted to give you that in the way of some information, and hopefully we'll be firming up that schedule in the very near future. Mr. Mayor, that's all that we have for today's briefing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCaslin. If there's nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. That's been moved by Councilman Jones. Is there a second?
Second by Johnson.
All right, seconded by Tyrone Johnson. Is there any member of council opposed to adjourning the meeting? Okay, then we are adjourned, and we will reconvene at 5:30.